What's happening, guys? My name is Hippo from the YPG Park Station in the media group. And today we'll be showing you some camera basics, basically in photography. So there are two ways of taking a picture. There is automatic, and this is when the camera basically decides the principles, like how much light comes in, everything for you. And there is manual. So you have automatic, you have manual. In manual, you have the ability to decide what you want. So what are these things that you want? There are three principles, and these principles are shutter speed, ISO, and aperture. With these three things, you have the freedom of taking a picture however long you want, however dark or bright you want, with whatever sensitivity of the light. So let's start with shutter speed. It is basically how long it takes for the picture to be taken. It sounds a bit funny, but bear with me. Your shutter opens and then closes, and that light that it absorbs paints the picture. So let's say it takes the picture half a second. Your shutter opens for half a second and closes. Now, why am I saying half a second? You may think that it is something quick. No, half a second is actually quite slow, because if you have something quicker, then you get a clearer picture, or you can get a picture where something or someone is moving fast, or an object is moving and you want to catch it when it's dead still, and that's when you use a fast shutter speed. So you use something like where you have the second divided by whatever number in your options in your camera. So in normal cameras, we have something like half a second, then a quarter of a second, that's called a fourth, and then you have an eighth, and then a 16th, and it keeps adding up until you have 100th, and it goes down until 1/4,000. So the quicker the picture, the less motion blur you have, and also less light you have. That's the thing. But if you take the picture, let's say 20 seconds, you take a picture for 20 seconds, that means a lot more light gets in. And when you have more light, then it can even go bright, overexposed, or blown out. But we'll get into these a bit later on when we blend everything together. Within shutter speed, you can also do things like light painting, or long exposure photography, star trail photography. And in all these things, you can make amazing photos, but you need to know how to use the other options, like aperture. What is aperture? It's basically how open or closed your shutter is open. So remember, shutter speed is the speed that it is open for, but aperture is how wide it gets or how closed it becomes. So the more open it is, yes, the more light enters the picture. But there's another thing that adds to that. You have something called depth of field. When you have a shallow depth of field, you have a separation between your foreground and your background. But when your aperture is closed, that means the number, because aperture is measured in f-stops. So the number there is raised to something real high. Let's say something like 8 or 14, 22. Mine ends on 22. When you have that, basically everything is in focus. There is nothing that you will miss. But when you have it on a low number, take your aperture down to something like 4 f-stop or 2 f-stop, 1.4 f-stop. Then that's when you have a separation between your object and your background. I'm trying to illustrate it there. Okay, so let's look into the third option, ISO. When we're looking at ISO, it's generally this sensitivity of the camera, how much sensitivity it has to light. When your ISO is on a high number, it is more sensitive to light. When it's on a low number, the darker your image becomes. So let's say you're in a scenario where you're shooting something and it's really dark. You've taken your aperture, you've dropped the number to try and open the shutter as open as possible, but it's just not enough. So you take your ISO and you increase it. But when you increase that ISO, there is a negative effect. The negative effect is that your image becomes grainy. It has this noise and it becomes distorted. It's almost like a glitch and it just does not always look nice. Depending on your camera, some work better, some work in a good way during low light situations. When it comes to taking pictures and having something good, it's not always about the camera, it's about who's behind the camera. And I'm not going to get into that, someone else will.
So guys, today I'll be giving you the different examples of things that should not happen when you're holding a camera. Things you should avoid. Like things that normally happen if you didn't apply the 3 principles Sipho told you guys about. So here we have your overexposed, I know right, it's like someone just took a picture of like a bright wall. And then we have your underexposed, and that is like load shedding that just happened right now, right? It's like, what happened? Were the lights off when you're taking this picture? And then the worst, blur. A person can't even see themselves. It's tough, but that's okay. So these are the 3 things that happen when you don't apply the 3 principles that Sipho just shared with you guys right now. And this is a result of what happens when all 3 are applied properly. Your ISO, your aperture, and your shutter speed. This, right? It looks more clear, more bright, like the lighting is perfect. It's not blurry, it's perfect. You can see what's actually going on. And in this course of the series, you will learn a lot of what we're going to be doing. And we're going to be talking about all these different cameras, your mirrorless camera, your DSLR. So it's going to be quite an experience. Don't miss out and tune in next week. We're out.